You know, you mentioned Mark, and Mark was in the movie Marc Lee. He was in the movie American Sniper as well. And again, there's something that comes across in the public image or the image that gets created through Hollywood and through books and through media and whatever else. And they really, in the movie American Sniper, they really missed the mark with Mark. I mean, they really missed the mark.
No
with
doubt.
Mark. Made him into kind of a weak-looking guy that didn't believe in what he was doing, which was obviously couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, to that point, we get asked all the time, like, tell us about American Sniper. Was that accurate? And I think it's important to say that. First of all, I'm very glad that Chris Kyle's story's out there, and I think that to get people to recognize what Chris did and the impact that he had, and the fact that his story is representative of so many hundreds of thousands of U.S. soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen that have deployed multiple times, what their families go through, and I think that's a great thing. But it is a Hollywood movie, yeah. And so the scenes in Iraq were not a reflection of the reality that we knew, and in particular that depiction of Mark. That's what disturbed those of us that served closely with Chris and closely with Mark. Were most disturbed by that, and it was just the way that Mark was portrayed. Hollywood they hate the Iraq War, so they got to have someone in there that doesn't like the Iraq War, and so they portrayed Mark in a way that he made some despair. They got him saying, I don't even remember exactly what he says, but he says some lines about he doesn't believe in what he's doing, and that is just utter and complete horseshit. I mean, there's no Marc Lee believed in that mission. I mean, he was an extraordinary warrior. And when other people were out to kill bad guys and try to do a bunch of operations, I mean, Mark truly believed we were there to help the Iraqi people. We need to free these people from this brutal reign of terror. And I think he had strategic insight that I'm not even sure I had. I mean, I read back like Mark's last letter home, and he talks about being involved in a great conflict, in a great struggle.
No, he had
like the one we're involved in, and it's. I think that was very reflective of that. This is this seeing that the enemy that we're fighting here. This type of jihadi, this jihadism with this strain of Islam that exports jihad across the world and wants to go out and terrorize and brutalize people. Like, this is a great struggle. This is going to be a generational struggle. This is going to go on for a long time. It certainly transcends Iraq, and I think he really seemed to sense that in a way that was pretty phenomenal.
In the movie, is they make him out to be this sad guy that's all serious, and again, they completely miss the mark. Just like they portray Chris to be this ultra serious guy. Mark was hilarious, gregarious, another guy that was joking all the time, mostly at inappropriate times, and had that. He would light up a room when he'd come in to a room because he was just on fire. And to portray him as this guy that's all down in the dumps and depressed, it was horrible to see that.
It was just so opposite of the real Mark. I mean, the brooding guy, and they had him as this kind of like pencil neck kind of geek, to quote Patton, couldn't fight his way out of a piss-soaked paper bag. I mean, Mark was a badass guy. He had massive arms. He carried his big, heavy Mark 48 machine gun that weighs like 27 pounds, fully loaded with all the gadgets on it, with no sling. He carried it on his shoulder like it was a little M4 rifle, that weighs 7 pounds. I mean, with all its gadgetry. Yeah. He was just an awesome warrior, and yeah, that side of him that was just hilarious. It was so many stories of him cracking jokes and just keeping everybody laughing.
And we kind of talked about if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't seen a series called on the History Channel called Live to Tell. It is a fantastic series that actually a former SEAL friend of ours, Ray Mendoza, produced.
He did. He produced it. He was in Ramadi, actually.
And he relieved us in Ramadi. When we got done with our deployment to Ramadi, he's one of the guys that came in the next task unit that came over and took our place.
And he worked out of Camp Corregidor.
That's right, which I just spoke about. So they made an episode. One of the episodes is about Charlie Platoon and Marc Lee. And we got to tell some of the stories there, but, you don't have that. You can't tell every story that you want to tell. You want to tell every story, every little memory you have of these guys. One that always sticks out in my mind because he joined your platoon late, and he came from another platoon, came into your platoon after workup, and one of the first trips we did with him was to Vegas. And we went up there to work at, what's the name of Nellis Air Force Base?
Nellis Air Force
We went up there
Base.
to work at Nellis. And
What
of course,
a boondoggle trip that was.
total boondoggle. We would work from probably about noon until, let's call it 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and then everyone would go gambling and drinking and partying until 10 o'clock the next morning, and then gamble. It was just one of those trips, but we were getting after it, and that's another thing about being a young SEAL. You don't owe any money, right? So I remember when I was a young SEAL, I was like the richest guy in the world because, you go from being a civilian that's 18 years old, making no money, and all of a sudden you're getting a paycheck, and then you get in the SEAL teams and you're getting dive pay and jump pay and demolition pay, and you're like the richest guy in the world. You're like a rock star. And that's kind of the mode that Mark was in. When we were in Vegas, he was big time in it, getting after it.
Well, I remember you on that trip. I remember you coming in and say, "HDH, are you in?" And I was like, "What is HDH?" You're like, "Are you in?"
You just have to commit.
I said, "Roger that, I'm in."
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm in.
I did that with a bunch of guys. HDH, who's in? And I went around. Guys like, I'm in. No one even knew what I was talking about. And then whatever, we got together that night. I'm like, all right, HDH, who's with me? And everyone joined up. I said, it's $100 hands. We're going to the blackjack table. We're all going to play 3 $100 hands.
Which,
boom,
to those guys at our Navy paychecks was a big deal.
yeah. So we did it, but playing gambling with Mark was insane because he was so like hostile and yet at the same time fun. And I remember I came walking down into the casino. And he's like, "Hey, sir." And I look over, and he's across the casino, and he's at the blackjack table, and he goes, he must have been on a winning streak. He goes, "When are the new Cadillacs coming out?" And that was just so him, just to be fired up like that. It was just awesome.
He was just one of those guys, and not only was he hilarious to be around, a big, strapping, good-looking dude. He just was very comfortable in his skin as well, and he was absolutely in love with his wife, Maya, who's in that in Live to Tell, and she had given him these little pajama pants. I mean, this is like, and he would wear them around the camp. These pajama pants, and I was like, "Bro, are you wearing pajama pants right now?" And he'd be like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Why are you wearing?" I mean, he's a new guy in a platoon. I was like,
"Don't let Jocko see you."
I was like, "Do you want to get your ass kicked? Like, why are you wearing pajama pants?" He's like, "They're comfortable." Yeah. Maya gave them to me. Yeah. I like them. Yeah. I mean, he's like, he just did like whatever. You don't like them? Who cares? So that was just the way Mark was, and he just was. I remember in particular. He was a strong Christian guy. He definitely he had gone to seminary for about a year or so, I think, to study to be a preacher, and decided, you know what? Instead of being a preacher, I want to be in the SEAL teams. But his Christian faith was certainly always a big piece of that. And I remember some of the most random things we were talking about. I don't even remember how it came up. But if you remember the old 1980s song, The Warrior, which is like cheeseball, 1980s, and we got in an argument about who sang The Warrior. And Mark was like, "It's Pat Benatar." And I'm embarrassed to say that I said, "No, it's Patti Smith." Yeah. Because I had this, like,
you don't have to admit that right
this
now.
gigantic collection of, any song you'd imagine on my iTunes, and so we argued about it. We had some wager. I don't even remember what the wager was, but it was in fact Patti Smith. That was right.
Right on, bro.
And I think that you talked about his faith, and we've talked about on this podcast before, when you get somebody that is is heroic. That oftentimes they have a certain sense of, the word that you just used was comfort. And you could see that with Marc, that he was comfortable in the fact that he might have to make the ultimate sacrifice. And I remember one of the things that I'll never forget about Marc is, as you guys would be rolling out on an operation, and you would line up the vehicles right in front of the chow hall on our little base, shark base. And if you guys were going out, I would go out there to see you guys off.
And just to help everybody understand, like, we're rolling out on an operation into some of the most dangerous enemy territory anywhere, and people would come out with Jocko and from our task unit and shake folks' hands. I mean, because you knew that it could very easily happen that not everybody's coming back from that op. Yeah. And it was always reassuring to see Jocko out there talking to people, shaking people's hands, and that was. And we're going out, particularly on an operation like that where IEDs are causing catastrophic damage and killing soldiers and Marines every single day.
Yeah, and those IEDs at this point were generally victim-activated IEDs, which means that the person that's going to get blown up is what activates the IED. So they have some kind of a pressure plate or a crunch wire or something that a Humvee runs over and causes the IED to detonate. That was sort of the premier mode that the enemy was in at this point, which meant that if you were in the first vehicle, you were most likely to hit that IED. And I remember, one of those nights came out and looked up at Marc and I said, "Hey, are you feeling lucky tonight?" And he had a big smile on his face. And he said that one of the other things he had said in Vegas, besides winning the new Cadillacs, one of the other things that he'd get everybody saying is when the dealer would bust, he'd say, "Everybody's a winner, everybody's a winner." And so I looked up at him and he said, "Everybody's a winner." And then there was another time I went out there and I said, "You ready to rock and roll tonight?" And he stood there in the turret and like a movie. They always have those cheesy salute scenes in a movie where the guy salutes the officer. He stood at attention to his turret and just cracked me a super crisp salute, and I probably flipped him off or
which is highly unusual for a SEAL to do. That's for sure.
Yeah. But you could see, man, he just had that confidence and that comfort in who he was, in what he stood for, and he was ready for anything, including the ultimate.
He was a phenomenal guy, absolutely, and just an honor to serve with men like that.